Welcome to Conversations About Grief. Here's our hosts, Steve Davis and the Reverend Ed Arneson.
Welcome to another episode of Conversations About Grief. I'm Steve Davis, and this is Reverend Ed Arneson, retired, past hospice chaplain and CEO. And we're going to talk about a very personal grief experience to me. It was the passing of my father back in 2005 and some of the things that I went through since then. And to give you an idea of what we went through, my father had worked very hard. He had a business where I grew up at the town where I grew up in. He had a little retail store that did excellent for quite a few years. Started out as a White's Auto, became a Western Auto store when those companies combined. And we had that business up until the day around the time he turned 70. Due to some circumstances beyond our control, we had to shut the business down. And Dad went from being someone that worked 6.5 days a week to, hey, I'm just going to watch TV. I'll do some stuff around the house, but I'm going to watch TV. And that was, who are we to tell him otherwise?
Right.
He'd worked hard all his life.
Right.
He had worked for other companies before he had his own. So around the age of 78, he got sick with type 2 diabetes. 79, he had a triple bypass. It was supposed to be a quadruple, but they could only do a triple bypass. He did not complete his cardio rehab. He hated that. I think he might have gotten a couple more years of life if he had have done that. But he started going downhill and he started suffering from dementia. There were several times where he'd be talking to my mother and he would talk about things. Dad was originally from New Jersey. And there was one time where he was talking with my mother and my mother said, wait, who am I? And he said, Dora Gordon. That was his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you? I'm David Gordon. That was his father. He had slipped back into an episode in his memory that from his growing up. These were getting pretty frequent. We did not have him tested for Alzheimer's because, like the medical doctor said, we've got all these other problems. Is an Alzheimer's diagnosis going to make a difference? He does have dementia. We know that. Let's just focus on quality of life.
Right.
So around 84, he was 84 years old. This is 2005. In December of that year, he started taking a lot further turns for the worse. He had several slip and fall episodes over the years. He had cracked some ribs. He'd broken some fingers, things like that. But he was getting worse and we knew it. So Mom took him to the hospice in Tyler. It's located on University. I remember that much. Yes. Took him there. They talked to the people. He was still ambulatory that morning. He was still getting around, but he needed assistance. And they said, he's not ready yet. We'll probably see him within the next 60 days. One good thing about hospice, they have a good idea when they take a look at you. They can tell you how much time you have left, like it or not. Well, that was okay. Dad had a major medical episode that night and Mom called for the ambulance, and my brother, who was also firefighter EMT at the time, he did not answer that call, but he had talked to some people and they said, get him straight to hospice. So they got him to hospice. They checked in and they're like, okay, they examined him again and they said 30 days. He's on the 30-day death list, as they call it. I know that sounds gruesome, but that's what it is. They can tell you that. Then he had a few more episodes in hospice and they said, you've got about 7 days. So Dad went into like I don't want to say coma, but it almost was. He came out of the state on Wednesday. He was talking, he was doing good. He was talking with us about different things. Then his pain level increased, so they gave him some more medicine. He went back to sleep Wednesday night. Early Sunday morning, they found that he had passed away, probably sometime around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And to tell you, the way things happened, it sounds really just different. Dad and I talked a lot. I worked with him in the store all the time. I graduated high school a year early so I could learn the business and take it over one day. We worked all the time. I spent more time with my dad than probably anybody else. And my dad would talk about different people when businessmen passed away, and he'd say, "Look at that. They're closing down the business for the entire day. You don't ever do that when I pass." They said, "Close for half day on the funeral, and then you reopen. Don't lose a whole day's business over my funeral. This is not a national holiday. You get to work." Okay. Well, that Sunday, I had a commercial carpet cleaning scheduled. I was in the building maintenance industry at the time. And my youngest brother called me in the morning. It was about 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. He called me and he said, "Hey, Dad passed earlier." And, I said, "Okay, thank you." I started getting ready to go do the carpet. I did not think about going to hospice. I was going by what he said, don't sit there crying all the time about it. Get up and work.
Right.
So I was getting ready and I get a call about an hour and a half later. My brother says, "Where are you at?" I said, "I'm getting ready to go to a commercial carpet." "Why?" He said, "You need to be here with us. Cancel your carpet and do that," which I did call the business owner and of course they were, "Oh, however much time you need, don't worry about it. This is unimportant to us. You take care of family things."
Right.
We went to hospice. Dad was still there. He had not been picked up by the funeral home yet. Mom was there. We talked for a little bit and then we got ready to go. And then we went back to the house that I grew up in. And Mom had us clear everything out. Dad had one of those elevator recliners that would help you stand up. She wanted that gone. She didn't get rid of any personal stuff, but all of the medical devices and things she wanted out of the house.
Yep.
So we cleaned the house. We rearranged it for her. It was going pretty good. This was on December 18th. And we were thinking, when are we going to do the funeral? Because it's so close to Christmas. We don't want to do a funeral right at Christmas time, but we don't want to wait either. So Mom decided Friday, December 23rd, we'll do the funeral then. So we did the funeral and everything. I remember I was sad at the funeral. I could not give a eulogy. I had fortunately written the eulogy down, and the pastor that conducted the funeral read my eulogy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I never would have been able to make it through it. And we did the burial. We did the funeral. We went to the cemetery. We did the graveside service, and then we came back home. And after that, I said, well, time to go back to work now. So I went back to work, started working just went back to work on my business. I mean, yes, I remembered that it had happened. I know for probably the first 2 weeks after Dad passed, Mom would go to the cemetery every day.
Okay.
And then she started tapering it off to like 3 times a week, then twice a week, then once a week. Now she goes every once in a while. She does not feel the need to go anymore the way that she did at first. And we had moved on with things. I pretty much figured Christmas time for the next 5 years was a really sad time for me. It was a time that I didn't want to. I just kind of did everything for my children, for my family. I would make sure they had a good Christmas. I was just kind of existing more or less. Finally, after the 5th year, things started feeling better, getting better. Then about a year or two after that, I'm thinking maybe 2011, 2012, maybe as late as 2013, probably 13 if I had to remember. A friend of mine that I'd gone to school with ever since 2nd grade, his father had been sick, battled cancer for years. I mean, he had battled cancer for like 15 years total. It would come and go. It would go into remission, then it would come back. This last time it came and it did not leave. It took him with it. And I remembered when that happened that day, this is probably 7 years after my dad's passing, over 7 years. And it felt just like it had happened that same day. And I had never been taught about grief, how to grieve. I know you mourn, you go to the funeral, you do the traditional stuff, but nobody ever taught me how to grieve. And my medical doctor told me, well, grief can be intense and grief can take sometimes 3-4 months to work through. Well, that's textbook answers. I mean, Wikipedia wasn't around
Everybody
just yet, but
wishes.
yeah.
Everybody wishes. Well, let me ask a question.
Yes.
What were you feeling all of this time? What was going on with you? What was your immediate response when Daddy died? Your emotional response?
I was sad. I knew though that I would rather have him at peace rather than
Talking
living
about
off
him.
machines. But yeah,
Talking about you.
I was sad to see him go. I wish
What
he
did
could have made it
sad
longer.
feel like?
It was almost like a depression experience somewhat. If I had the opportunity, I probably would have laid in bed all day for a while.
Okay.
First, when I say a while, I mean weeks on weeks, but I had a business to run, other things. But yeah, I was battling that back too, just intense sadness about it. But
Did you have moments when you thought he was still here?
yes, for about Dad and I talked on the phone all the time until Dad got really, really sick toward the end. We would talk at least once a week on the phone, sometimes more than that.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I was waiting for him to call me, or I
Yeah.
picked up the phone to call him.
Right.
Then you realize, wait, this isn't going to work.
Right.
This can't work.
Did you dream about him?
I had one dream about him. It's real interesting. He was standing there. He was in the store. He was looking at me. He was smiling. I remember telling him, hey, I tried to do what you said. I was going to go do that carpet. I wasn't going to take the full day off. And he just smiled at me and nodded his head.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
was the one dream.
All right. Then going forward, the thing at Christmas is just so typical.
Mhm.
People are kind of surprised. I've seen people do all kinds of things. Whatever they've done in years gone by, they change the process.
Right.
Sometimes people are able to. I knew one family that Papa always sat at the head of the table. He was the Papa. Everybody, and
Mhm.
Christmas was a big deal because they were responding to him, and so they put his chair there, put his picture in it, and all had a great big family cry, and then went on remembering the things that were funny and happy and good that they had done. One family in West Texas always had these great big family Christmases where everybody brought food and they all went out to eat. And so people, and those holiday things and special days, holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, those things stay with us for a long time.
Yes.
And I have the sense that grieving, feeling the loss, understanding the loss, and your comment there that the dream was I wanted Papa to know I tried to do what he told me to do
Mhm.
is incredibly insightful into how we respond when someone is gone. Uh, what was the funeral like? What was said at the funeral?
It was a very small funeral, actually. My dad's business had shut down in 1992. Now, before that, my dad was one of the better known people in our community. If my dad was the sort of guy that if he went with you to the bank, I mean, one time I was working for an out of town company. This was after the business closed. I couldn't get my paycheck cash. Dad said, hold on, I'll go with you. So we walk into this bank that wasn't even his primary bank.
Mm-hmm.
And, the woman's giving me, she looked up and saw him and, is this your son? Yes. Okay, we'll cash the check. It was that sort of thing.
Yeah.
My dad could make things happen at the time. He had a lot of clout, I guess you would say. It was a small town, though, a really small town, but he did have some clout. So, yes.
What other members of the family's response to his death do you remember?
Mom was sad, but she was composed. There was a certain sense of, I don't know the right word. I think some call it grace or things of that sort.
I'm a guy
She
going to
was
be strong
composed.
for the kids is basically
Yes,
what it
yes,
is, which is more than a mom should put on herself.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And it was, like I said, it was a small funeral. We had maybe, besides family and immediate family, we had maybe 5 or 6 other people there at
Okay.
the funeral because toward the end, Dad didn't get out and do anything. He just
Yeah.
wanted to stay home. So
Okay.
it was kind of embarrassing for uh, my 2 younger brothers. They were like, he should have gotten out. We should have had a larger funeral, this or that. And I'm just like, so what?
Uh,
It is what it is. And my the pastor read my eulogy. My 2 younger brothers read their eulogies. The pastor who'd been a friend of my dad's, it wasn't even our church pastor,
uh-huh.
but it was a friend of ours. I mean, I went to school with his kids. I knew his kids. We had all pretty much grown up together practically. He did the service really well. We played 3 or 4 songs that Mom selected that she wanted played there. And then my fourth grade teacher, who was also a church pianist, played piano during the service as
Mhm.
well.
Okay.
And it was a simple service. My brothers and I and 2 members of the fire department and one EMT that my brother worked with, we were the pallbearers.
Okay.
So, yes.
All right. Couple other questions, and you've done well. You
Mhm.
you managed to stay kind of involved in the process. One special memory of Dad. What was it?
There's so many of them. I've got a lot of good memories. Besides working, we went fishing all the time together. Main thing was just working with Dad. I always enjoyed working with my father. And towards the end, about a year and a half before he passed away, no, it's close than that. Not quite a year before he passed away, my first wife and I had entered divorce proceedings, and I had moved everything out of the house, and Dad wanted to come with me to work in the business, work in my business,
Yeah.
and I was all for it. Mom did not want that to happen because she was afraid he would have a medical episode or
Right.
something, and
Right.
I wouldn't know what to do. So
Right.
he never did get to do that, but we had talked about everything. I was on 9/11. I had turned on the TV that morning and the first tower had been hit, but nobody knew what it was. I was on the phone with him watching the news, watching Good Morning America when the second plane hit.
Yeah.
So there were just so many things like that.
Okay.
It's
And
yeah.
what moment do you remember him being most proud of you?
Probably the birth of my first child, my daughter Elizabeth. He was very
Okay,
proud.
good, good.
He was very proud to be a grandfather. He enjoyed that role. He was there for the birth of, let me see, he was there for the birth of my 3 daughters.
Okay. Then we can agree grief is a difficult process.
Yes.
It is a process with considerable pain.
Hmm.
It is a process most likely more difficult for men because we are conditioned not to show our emotions, be strong. All us older folks remember when John Kennedy was killed, and Jacqueline made such an attempt at being strong,
Hmm.
and people admired her, except people thought the degree to which she was strong will does not reflect what she really feels. And so it might have been better for her and her kids and her life forward. And who knows? I understand. But had she been more direct with what she was feeling, being the president's wife is a different
Hmm.
thing than being somebody, there's certain things you got to do.
Yes.
So I think you sound like you managed the process very well.
Thank
You
you.
learn from the process. And I think the process is something that everyone in the country, one way or the other, has experience with. All you got to do to experience grief is live long enough,
Yes.
sooner or
Yes.
later. And I think there are losses now. As we said last time, the losses with COVID are just incredibly difficult to put your minds around. That the
Yes.
amount of pain and the amount of difficulty. Grief for loss is I guess, the epitome of grief. And
Mhm.
grief for a lot of other things is obvious too.
Yes.
I appreciate you and your sense of what you are able to share, and I particularly appreciate getting to know your father a little bit this way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, folks, very much. We will visit with you again.
Yes, thanks. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section here on our channel. We will get back and answer them on future conversations with grief. Thank you very much. Take care.
Say what you need to say. Say what you need to say. Say what you need to say. Say what you need to say.
Thank you for listening today. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions about grief, please email us at conversationsaboutgrief@gmail.com.